Today we're going to continue this part of our study of Nephilim, giants, fallen angels, with the following subjects. Were biblical giants unearthed in the Golan Heights? What about Og in the Bible? Did National Geographic discover a giant skeleton? And I have some interesting fake photos of giant skeletons. Remember, in our previous study, we covered an article from the World News Daily Report. Did the Smithsonian Institution destroy thousands of giant skeletons in the early 1900s? And we found that when we went to the website, they have a disclaimer that explicitly states that its stories are entirely fictional. And from this link there, let's read it again. WNDR assumes, however, all responsibility for the satirical nature of its articles and for the fictional nature of their content. All characters appearing in the articles in this website, even those based on real people, and we can add to that real places, real sites, because we will be covering that today, are entirely fictional, and any resemblance between them and any persons living dead or undead is purely a miracle. They have a sense of humor. At the conclusion of our previous study, we briefly mentioned another fictional story about giant skeletons from the World News Daily Report. Now let's take a look at that story. And the title is Biblical Giants Unearthed in Golan Heights, ? And I have the link there. We could go to it, but we don't need to because I've reproduced it entirely with photos and quote, word for word. We're going to go through it. Now, this is the photo that they have along with the article. Now, you would assume, oh, this is from the excavation site. But it's not. It's a fake photo. So my comment is, since this story is fictional, because that's what they say at the site, the dramatic photo of giant human skeletons used at the top of the story is a fake photo, not a photo from an excavation in the Golan Heights. Back to the article. Quote, a recent archaeological dig has unearthed no less than 24 skeletons of giant proportions near the ancient ruins of Rujim el-Hiri, located in the Golan Heights, a contested area claimed by both Syria and Israel. My comment as follows. An internet search shows that Rujim el-Hiri is an ancient megalithic structure in the Golan Heights. The fact that the site is real lends credibility to the story. If it is not realized, the story is fictional, purely fictional. And this happens when information from the fictional story is disseminated without knowing the source of the story, and the fact that the source provides fictional stories, not factual news articles. So, the reference to an archaeological dig unearthing, quote, no less than 24 skeletons of giant proportions, end quote, near the site is part of the fake story. And here is an actual photo of the site. You can go to Wikipedia for Rujim el-Hiri, which I have done. And you will see, if you do an internet search of that site, you will find reliable sources of information on the site. Now there it is. That's an actual photo of the site. And you can see there's concentric rings of rock there. Now back to the article, quote, a team of archaeologists led by the University of Tel Aviv claims that the skeletons might be older than the ruins themselves, already dating back to 5,000 years according to mainstream archaeology. My comment on this is, an internet search shows there is no University of Tel Aviv, as referred to in the story. There is, however, a Tel Aviv University. If it were a real news story, it would have the correct name of the real university. Does that make sense? You can, they make it sound real, but it's not. Quote, back to this article here. The site of Rujim el-Hiri has been extensively searched for decades already, but our team noticed a mound nearby which we thought was of major interest. It has been 2 long years, but it was definitely worth the effort Tom Yeager, archaeologist. That's supposed to be a quote from the archaeologist, one of them working the site. My comment, an internet search for archaeologist Tom Yeager turns up nothing. This is not surprising since the story is fake and the university is fake. But can you see how people, if they just read this without realizing, even if they look it up and, oh, this is a real site, they're going to really be fooled, and I'm sure a lot of people are. Back to the article, quote, the Rujim El Hiri site, which consists of an estimated 4,000 tons of uncut black volcanic basalt field stones piled and wedged into between 5 and 9 concentric rings, has always been a site of interest to biblical archaeology because of its mention in the Bible. Now let's go back. Now see here, you see 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 here. So this description, part of it is correct, but part of it's not correct here. My comment. Now, from my knowledge of the Bible, because it's saying here it's mentioned in the Bible. From my knowledge of the Bible, and from doing an internet search on this subject, nowhere do I find this site being mentioned in the Bible as stated in this fictional story. Also, the description in the article of, quote, between 5 and 9 concentric circles, end quote, does not match the description found in reliable sources and what we saw from the photo, such as an article from Haaretz, an Israeli news source, which states the following, quote, Rujim El Hiri's unremarkable appearance from the ground belies its striking form when seen from the air. It consists of 4 circles. All right, so see 4 circles versus what was 5 to 9 in that fake article. The outermost more than 500 feet across, made up of an estimated 42,000 tons of basalt stone. Now that part, the basalt stone, that part is close in this article, but not the thing about how many concentric circles. The remains of massive walls that experts believe once rose as much as high as 30 feet. I doubt this part of the story here, okay? I don't think that's true. It is an enormous feat of construction carried out 600 years ago by a society about which, excuse me, this is from Haaretz, so this is true, all right? So I'm getting myself confused here. So we can trust from Haaretz. Now that I would trust. So this actually is pretty amazing that those remaining rings would have been as high as 30 feet. It is an enormous feat of construction carried out 6,000 years ago by a society about which little is known. Now if we go back to the article, they show this, I'm not sure what this is. It has a caption underneath it. Some scholars believe the structure of concentric stone circles known as Rujim El Hiri was an astrological temple or observatory, others a burial complex. So they're showing this photo. It doesn't really say what it is. We don't even know if it's real. It looks like something somebody has put together. I don't know if it's even based on anything real or if it was just made for this article, this fake article. But when I did a search, I couldn't find any reliable internet articles about showing that photo. So now it says here the caption under the photo implies this is what the ancient structure looked like, but to me it doesn't match the site. You know, if you go back up to that, I don't know, to me it really doesn't match it. The only somewhat factual statement in the caption is that the site is thought by some to be a burial site or a site used for astronomical observations. Now that is true. If you talk about that megalithic site, they do think it could have been a burial site, it could have been a place where they did astronomical observations. Some even think it was a place where they would take a person, I guess, who was very important after they died and put their body out there in the center and let the birds eat the flesh and everything before they took the bones and buried them somewhere. But nobody really knows for sure. However, now, there is only one possible burial site in the center and no remains were discovered in it. certainly this is not a site for burials of giants. Now let's go back to the article. And this gets back to what Ramon was asking about Og. They talk about Og, quote, "It is said in the Bible that Og, king of Bashan," and Bashan was north, right, Peter? Yes. In the area of today, what would be Golan Heights, correct? Golan Heights up near the Hula. And they do have a lot of volcanic basalt rock. It's all that black rock, which we've seen when we've been up there on our trips, on our Ministry Israel tours. So let's go back to the quote. "It is said in the Bible that Og, king of Bashan, ruled over these lands. Og and his mighty army was slain by Moses, and he is said to have been the last of the Rephaim, a Hebrew word meaning giant." Now my comment is, in a future study, we will explain about the Rephaim, described in the Word of God as a, quote, quote, a tall people. However, this does not mean they were a race of angel human or even human giants. And now I just want to bring your attention, in this original article, you notice how they don't even capitalize Hebrew? Now, you know the word Hebrew has to be capitalized. And you would think any kind of legitimate news source would capitalize that word. That wouldn't get passed through like this. So that's another one of those little signs. You can kind of tell on some of these things you get that are fake, emails and different things, the English won't be quite right or whatever. So grammar, looking at grammar also can help to discern whether that's something for real or something phony. All right, continuing with the article. Could this be the resting ground of these mythical giants the Bible tells us about? I would not be surprised, explains Gunter Webb, head of the Department of Biblical Studies at the University of Tel Aviv. Now, let me just make a comment here. For those Christians who believe that the sons of God were fallen angels who had sex with human women to produce the race of Nephilim, when they read this, they're going to go, wow. You know, they're going to think, hey, this is really something here. We have some evidence. Now, my comment is, as we have previously explained, there is no University of Tel Aviv. Excuse me, this is wrong here. Tel Aviv University, remember? Let me make a correction on this real quick while I'm thinking of it. So there's no University of Tel Aviv, but this should be, there is a Tel Aviv University. My error there. There is a Tel Aviv University. So I'll make that correction in my study. If this were a legitimate news article, it would have the correct name of the university. Even if one does a search of the real Tel Aviv University, it does not have a Department of Biblical Studies as referred to in this fictional story. There is no director of such a non-existent department, so it is no surprise an internet search turns up nothing on the name Gunter Webb. In fact, the site has actually been excavated by Joseph Garfinkel and Michael Freichman of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. No skeletons have been found at the site. The tomb at the center was previously looted of jewelry and weapons by tomb robbers. And I have footnotes in here. You can go to the Wikipedia. Actually, Wikipedia has a good article on it. They have an article for Tel Aviv University and for the site Regime El Hiri. Now let's go back to the article. Quote, "One of the giants was covered in a copper armor. One of the copper swords was also as hard as steel and made in a fashion unknown to us. This is definitely the most interesting dig I have ever laid my eyes upon," end quote, explains the man who has been in the field for over 4 decades. Comment. Now, there was no discovery. The whole thing, that's all phony. There was no discovery of copper armor or copper sword, quote, as hard as steel and made in a fashion unknown to us. Peter, I don't think copper is anywhere near as hard as steel, do you? I don't think so. You know, this is just more, it's just more of the fictional, what they've added in there that's fictional. And whatever was in the tomb was robbed long ago. The only item associated with the tomb that was discovered was, quote, one Chalcolithic pin. Now, Chalcolithic refers to the Copper Age. Pin dropped in a passageway. So I guess on the way out of robbing this tomb-like structure, they dropped something, and that was what was discovered. As we can see, this story is fictional. The problem that it is being disseminated through the internet is, the problem is it is being disseminated through the internet as factual. In our next section, we will see a good example of how this kind of false information is picked up and circulated in a way that makes it seem it is real and that it's factual. So whenever you're coming across things like this, try to do your due diligence and researching and confirm if something is really a real story or just something fake. And as we all know, there's a lot of fake news today. Now, I'm going to show you this YouTube video, which actually blends the fictional story from this Golan Heights giant skeleton story with the actual biblical information about Og in the Bible. So let's watch this now. And I have this previously set up, so hopefully we can go right to it.
Have you ever heard of a man known as Og? References to Og appear in the Phoenician inscriptions from Byblos, within the much older Canaanite Ugaritic texts, within Midian on the northwest Arab Peninsula, in Deuteronomy, in the book of Numbers, and in Joshua. Mentioned in many religious and non-religious texts, king of Bashan, which is now the Golan Heights. Who was this Og? Well, it turns out Og was a giant. A rather special giant. He was, in fact, the last of his kind. The book of Numbers states that he died during the Battle of Edrei. Deuteronomy chapter 3, verse 11, declares that his bedstead, translated in some texts as sarcophagus, was made of iron and was 9 cubits in length and 4 cubits in width, about 13.5 feet by 6 feet. It goes on to say that at the royal city of the Ammonites, his giant bedstead could still be seen as a novelty at the time the texts were written. Fast forward to the present day.
Notice this.
Discovery has been made.
Do you recognize that? That is the story from that fictional story, the site that does the fictional stories. This is exactly from that article. That's exactly how it appears. Biblical giants unearthed in Golan Heights, ? There's the photo, and this is the little subtext title here. That's exactly where he got this, and he doesn't realize this was a fictional story. And that's unfortunate.
Discovery, which could see more biblical stories being proven historically accurate. A recent archaeological dig has unearthed no less than 24 skeletons, all of giant proportions, near the ancient ruins of Rujem el-Hiri, which is indeed located within the Golan Heights. What's more, compellingly, this was no normal burial. During a press briefing, the team responsible for the discovery expressed their views to the world. Quote, "The site of Rujem el-Hiri has been extensively searched for decades already, but our team noticed a mound nearby, which we thought was of major interest. It has been 2 long years, but it was definitely worth the effort," said Tom Yagur, one of the archaeologists on site. One of the giants was covered in an exquisitely crafted suit of copper armor. One of their copper swords was also as hard as steel and made in a fashion unknown to modern man.
And you notice in this video, he's adding in these are all fake photos, and whether or not he knows it, I don't know, but it's just more fake stuff.
Could this really be the final resting place of the last of the giants? All we can hope is that the Smithsonian doesn't get a chance to buy them.
Now see, isn't that sad? Now they're putting the Smithsonian down, and we already showed previously that the article about the Smithsonian destroying thousands of giant skeletons was another fake story. And if you read some of the comments below this video I just showed you, these Christians are just all irate oh, the Smithsonian, they're evil and all, you know, just terrible comments about the Smithsonian Institution, and none of that is true.
Isn't it the Smithsonian Institute, that institution?
I looked it up, and it's maybe Smithsonian Institute. I can't remember if it's institute. Is it institute? So people are thinking that the Smithsonian is destroying all evidence of giant skeletons, and these are all fake stories. Now, if you just came across that, I'll bet there's a lot of people come across that and watch it would be thinking, wow, this is awesome, especially believers who think that there was an ancient race of fallen angel human giants. So as we can see again, the video is citing false information from the fictional story in the World News Daily Report about giant skeletons discovered in the Golan Heights. I mean, I can go back up here real quick and we can actually go to, and I can show you that what they have in this video. You see this? You recognize this in the video? Okay. This is where it came from, World News Daily Report. There's your disclaimer saying these are satirical, fictional stories. And yet, this person took this information, thinking it was actually a factual article, and incorporated it into this YouTube video about Og. And this is where we could get into real problems. This kind of thing just spreads like a virus through the internet, is picked up by people everywhere, and sometimes even legitimate news sources get fooled by some of these stories, which we'll see as we continue here today. We can see from this video that the maker of the video believes that Og's bedstead proves that Og was a giant from a race of ancient giants, and along with that other fake article that he thought was true, or he or she, whoever made the article. Let's actually go back to the Bible, the Word of God, and see what is said about this. Deuteronomy 3:11. For only Og, king of Bashan, was left of the remnant of the Rephaim. Behold, his bedstead was an iron bedstead. It is in Rabbah of the sons of Ammon. Its length was 9 cubits, that's 13.5 feet if you go by 18 inches in a cubit, and its width 4 cubits, which would be 6 feet by ordinary cubit. The Word of God does not provide specific information about Og's height. Now that's a really important key point here. It's not saying how tall he was, although he could certainly have been tall, as the Rephaim were a tall race, and we plan to cover that subject in a future study. The length of the bedstead cannot be assumed to be the same as or even close to his height. In fact, the Hebrew word translated bedstead probably refers to a canopied throne, not an actual bed. According to Ellicott's commentary for English readers, commentary on Deuteronomy 3:11, and I'm going to quote that, and I have it footnoted here, and you can go to BibleHub.com for this information and read it for yourself. Quote, now we're talking about that Hebrew word that has been quoted, bedstead. The word may mean either bedstead or coffin. Both the word for bedstead and the word for iron have given rise to some discussion and difficulty. An iron bedstead and an iron coffin are almost equally improbable. Basalt has been suggested. Now remember up there in the Golan, we were talking about it's volcanic rock. It's this black basaltic rock. Basalt has been suggested as an alternative. But though there is basalt in Argob, there is none in Rabat Ammon. Condor, who has recently explored Rabat, has discovered a remarkable throne of stone. All right, key in on that, remarkable throne of stone on the side of a hill there, and he suggests that the Hebrew word rendered bedstead, which properly signifies a couch with a canopy, may apply to this. The word for iron in Talmudical, in the Talmud, means also a prince. So see the meanings of the Hebrew words, and here we're talking about the Hebrew word for iron. It has another possible usage as far as the Talmud anyway. And this meaning has been suggested for the name Barzillai, which we find in the same district in later times. Now here they're going to give an alternative translation. His, referring to Og's, canopied throne was a princely one, and yet remains in Rabat of the Ammonites, would be the meaning of the passage on this hypothesis. The dimensions of the throne recently discovered are said to be nearly those given in this verse. Now that's interesting, and I don't know when this commentary was written, so I don't know the time of that discovery of that. But in other words, even understanding that it's not, we are probably not dealing with an actual bed here anyway, all right? So the interpretation that the bedstead refers to a canopied throne makes the most sense and shows its dimensions cannot be used to deduce Og's height. So there's no way that you can take those dimensions for this structure to indicate anything about his height. Now, he may have been a very big, tall person, but you certainly cannot just say, oh, this is, then he must be such and such. He's got to be one of these really big giants. As we have shown in our Nephilim study, there was no angel-human giant race that existed before or after the flood. Certainly, some of the people living in the land of Canaan and surrounding areas could have been taller and larger than the Israelites, but this does not make them angel-human giants of extraordinary size. Any questions so far on this? Now let's take another subject here. Scientists discovered giant skeleton, real or fake? Let's watch this video.
I was raised as an only child with two people who basically hate.
And I guess we have a...
Close it.
Huh?
We close it back door.
I can't, I'm having the same, I think we had this issue.
Yeah, well, hit the escape button.
I already have.
Oh, really?
3 times.
Oh.
First thing I did here. We had this issue not too long ago, but I can't remember how we fixed it. So let's just. I mean, somehow it was fixed, but I can't remember how we did that.
Well, you can quit out of it. Just,
Well, I'm hitting escape. Do you want me to quit out of it some other way?
yeah, just the Apple Q to quit. Or Command Q.
Command Q.
You're gonna
Okay,
have to click on it again.
let's see if we can do this again here.
Sorry. You got all those other windows open.
Yeah, we need to close some of those. Okay, okay, this is the one we want to look at. You want me to close the other windows
No.
now?
It's just going to slow things down.
Okay. Well, should I do it then?
It should be fine.
You guys have been sending me pictures of these giant skeletons lately. What is this all about? Bill's channel viewers like Jack Garbutt, Vidal Figueroa, Amar Taha, and Brandon Rhodes have all alerted me to these photos. Most of them show ancient giants being dug up by scientists all over the world. But seriously, folks, are these pictures real or are they fake? That's what everybody seems to want to know. The first thing I did was just kind of do a general search to see how much of this stuff is out there. It wasn't a truckload, but then again, it wasn't just 1 or 2 either. Okay, now there is a little problem with this in that I can't tell you whether all of these pictures are real or fake. I don't have time to check each and every one of them. So I think what we'll do today is we're just going to pick one picture and we're going to take a look at that. And if that turns out to be a lot of fun and you want to do some more, then maybe we'll pick up a couple more pictures later. Okay, so for today, this is going to be the photo we're going to take a look at right here. Now, this photo has been claimed to be a photo of an ancient giant that was dug up by the National Geographic Society of India. It was reported to be real in the Hindu Voice newspaper. But is it? What do you think? All right, this is what I want you to do. Take out a piece of paper, pencil, or type this into your computer, however you want to do it. But I want you to give me your answer right now. Real or fake? Because I have the official answer right here. And I want to just try to keep you honest. Okay? All right, here we go. According to my secret panel of judges, this one's going to surprise you. The photo depicting the giant skeleton and described as a National Geographic discovery in India is 100% totally, without a doubt, fake. I am shocked. I mean, it was reported in an official newspaper as being real. Now, do you see why I'm always skeptical of these media reports? This thing's fake. Now listen to this story. When the National Geographic Society got wind that there was this story going around that they discovered this giant skeleton, not only did they deny it, but they put their researchers on it and got to the bottom of it. Then they published a big article about how they were the victim of a hoax in their own magazine. In their article, Nat Geo traced the photo back to a Photoshop contest on a website called Worth 1000. The goal was to come up with the best fake pictures of archaeological anomalies. Now that's like saying, come up with like, Indiana Jones, discovered a monster kind of thing. I mean, completely fictional. This picture, called Giants, was created by a Photoshop artist using the handle Ironkite, and it won 3rd place in the contest. Get it? 3rd place in a contest to create a fake photo? Okay, so this guy Ironkite wouldn't reveal his true identity to National Geographic, but he did tell them how he cooked up this picture. He first started out with a real picture like this one of a mastodon excavation in the United States. He then digitally superimposed a human skeleton over the beast's remains. Then, after that, he added this man digging. Now, if you look very closely, Ironkite had some problems with the shovel here, so he had to remove part of it. In the end, the guy just ends up holding a stick instead of a shovel. So I don't know why, but I'm guessing nobody at any of these newspapers that published this story as real looked at this photo close enough to see that little problem area. Oh man, you gotta love the media. Anyway, listen, that's all the time I have for today. Just to go over this one photo. But listen, if you guys really like this type of stuff, you want me to go over some more of these, send me your best discoveries to billschannel@gmail.com. I'll take a look at them, and if we find some really interesting ones, and this video is popular enough, in other words, you guys like watching this type of a story, I'll do a couple more of them, because I really like these stories. They're so crazy. I'll see you next time.
Now, the interesting thing about that story was picked up and put out by a real, legitimate news source thinking it was true. So this is what can even happen. That fake photo and different versions of the story have been circulating for years. Let's read the entire detailed article about it in the National Geographic News. Skeleton of Giant is Internet Photo Hoax, dated December 14th, 2007. And this is the article that was referenced in the video you just watched. The National Geographic Society has not discovered ancient giant humans despite rampant reports and pictures. The hoax began with a doctored photo and later found a receptive online audience, thanks perhaps to the image's unintended religious connotations. A digitally altered photograph created in 2002 shows a reclining giant surrounded by a wooden platform with a shovel-wielding archaeologist thrown in for scale. By 2004, the quote, discovery was being blogged and emailed all over the world. Quote, giant skeleton unearthed, end quote. And it's been enjoying a revival in 2007. And here we are in 2017, 10 years later, and people are, huh? Oh yeah, 2018. And January of 2018. And here, you know, this story is still circulating. The photo fakery might be obvious to most people, but the tall tale refuses to lie down even 5 years later if a continuing flow of emails to National Geographic News are any indication. And note, the National Geographic Society owns National Geographic News. The messages come from around the globe: Portugal, India, El Salvador, Malaysia, Africa, the Dominican Republic, Greece, Egypt, South Africa, Kenya. But they all ask the same question: is it true? Helping to fuel the story's recent resurgence are a smattering of media outlets that have reported the find as fact. An often cited March 2007 article in India's Hindu Voice Monthly, for example, claimed that a National Geographic Society team, in collaboration with the Indian Army, had dug up a giant human skeleton in India. Recent exploration activity in the northern region of India uncovered a skeletal remains of a human of phenomenal size, the report read. The story went on to say the discovery was made by a, quote, National Geographic Team India Division with support from the Indian Army, since the area comes under the jurisdiction of the Army, end quote. The account added that the team also found tablets with inscriptions that suggest the giant belonged to a race of superhumans that are mentioned in the Mahabharata, a Hindu epic poem from about 200 BC. Quote, they were very tall, big, and very powerful, such that they could put their arms around a tree trunk and uproot it, end quote, the report said, repeating claims that initially appeared in 2004. Voice editor P. Devamuthu admitted to National Geographic News that his publication was taken in by the fake reports. The Monthly, which is based in Mumbai, that's Bombay, published a retraction after readers alerted him to the hoax, he said. Quote, we are against spreading lies and canards, he said. Moreover, our readers are a highly intellectual class and will not brook any nonsense, end quote. Other blog entries, such as a May 2007 posting on a site called Srini's weblog, cite a report supposedly published in the Times of India on April 22, 2004, but a search of that newspaper's archive revealed no such article. And then we have a subheading here, Arabian giant. Variations of the giant photo hoax include alleged discovery of a 60 to 80 foot long human skeleton in Saudi Arabia. In one popular take, which likewise first surfaced in 2004, an oil exploration team is said to have made the find. Here, the skeleton is held up as evidence of giants mentioned in Islamic rather than Hindu scriptures. Now, how much time do we have? Okay, good. Websites dedicated to debunking urban legends and net lore picked up on the various giant hoaxes soon after they first appeared. California-based Snopes, and we know a lot of us don't like it because they're liberals and they have some stuff that's not right, but on some stuff they do have and it is correct, okay? So just be aware of that. California-based Snopes.com, for example, noted that the skeleton image had been lifted from Worth 1000, which hosts photo manipulation competitions. Titled Giants, the skeleton and shoveler picture had won third place in a 2002 contest called Archaeological Anomalies 2. The image's creator, an illustrator from Canada who goes by the screen name Iron Kite, told National Geographic News via email that he had nothing to do with the subsequent hoax. He added that he wants to remain anonymous, because some forums that debated whether the giant was genuine or not, quote, were turning their entire argument into a religious one, end quote. It was argued, for instance, that the Saudi Arabian find was entirely consistent with the teachings of the Quran. Quote, this was about the same time the death threats and cash bounties were being issued against cartoonists and other industry professionals for doing things like depicting the Prophet Muhammad, Iron Kite wrote. Now how the image was made, we already, that was already explained in the video. So I don't think we need to read that again. And this guy, Iron Kite, he thought it was funny that, you know, the shovel had to be modified and it didn't have the shovel end and it was just a stick, and he thought it was funny people didn't notice it was just a stick. And he explains a little more detail about what he did with some of the other parts of it. He said, the guy who created it said he's tickled that the picture, which took only about an hour and a half to create, has generated so much internet attention. Quote, I laugh myself silly when some guy claims to know someone who was there, or even goes so far as to claim that he or she was there when they found the skeleton and took the picture, end quote. Quote, sometimes people seem so desperate to believe in something that they lie to themselves or exaggerate in order to make their own argument stronger, end quote. Wanting to believe, Alex Boese, curator of the Virtual Museum of Hoaxes, said fake giants have a long history going back to at least the 1700s. The recent hoax is reminiscent of the once famous Cardiff giant myth, and I have some information about that as I've been researching the subject, and I plan on including that in some additional material in future studies. So the once famous Cardiff giant myth, involving a 10-foot tall stone figure dug up in 1869 in Cardiff, New York. Many people believed the figure was a petrified man and claimed he was one of the giants mentioned in the Bible's book of Genesis. Quote, there were giants in the earth in those days, end quote. He said the recent giant hoax, quote, taps into people's desire for mystery and their desire to see concrete confirmation of religious legends, end quote. So we can see that many Christians who believe the wrong interpretations, sons of God referring to fallen angels, they do not understand the context of Genesis, of the chapters preceding Genesis 6, to understand that it's dealing with the godly line of Seth and them intermarrying with the ungodly line of Cain, and that this has nothing to do with fallen angels having sexual relations with human women. This is an impossibility. We explained that in the previous Nephilim teachings. But the problem is some Christians totally believe this, and therefore when they run across this kind of information, they just suck it right up without any kind of discernment. So we want to always be sure that we check things out. Let's look at some fake photos of giant skeletons. They're just all over the internet. We have, in our previous teachings, we've already seen one of these that I'm going to go through this list. Some we've already covered. Remember this one here? Remember that one? And that relates to that we dealt with in our previous teaching, where we covered that fake story about National Geographic destroying thousands of giant skeletons in the early 1900s, and this photo was a part of that study and teaching, and we showed that that is most likely, that femur is one that was fabricated by that man who has that museum. And there's different stories, different versions of the story. One has it was found in Turkey, one has it was found in Ohio. So this is all going back to what we already saw. And now, of course, in this study, we already covered the fake story and photo about the discovery of giant skeletons in the Golan. We showed that photo. And that's a fake photo, went with the fake article. And now we've just covered this fake story about the National Geographic discovering this giant skeleton in India. or Saudi Arabia, depending upon the version of the story. Now, to this list of fake photos, we can add the following fake photos from the internet article of Giants, Rumors, Myths, and Reality. And I have that footnoted there with the link. Now, this photo that we're going to show is a fake photo, and it was also created for a Photoshop contest at that worth1000.com. Okay, so you can see the skull and the man there. And take a notice here, this gap here, because you're going to see another interesting photo, and it's going to have that same gap in the front teeth. This photo is a fake photo of giants found in Greece, and you can see it looks like a dig site. You see this giant's skull, and notice the gap in the teeth. It's the same as this. It's a little tricky. It's been used in this photo. All right, now the original photo. Now let's explain this, and we'll go down to the original photo. This is the original photo here. You notice you don't see any skull here, right? But you see the skull has been inserted here. And another thing is, you see this large bone here has been kind of made to appear a little bit thinner. All right, the original photo left below was taken of a 1993 University of Chicago dinosaur dig in Niger in Africa. The Photoshop version right below shows the inserted skull as well as a narrowed bone at the bottom of the photo. So again, here the skull. See, this is a comparison side by side of that first photo we showed, that first fake photo we showed, and here you can see that they're the same. The color's been changed, but it's definitely the same. Now here are some more digitally manipulated photos of giant skeletons that you can see at blog.designcrowd.com. These are examples of things people make, and then unfortunately they get passed around as if they are actual photos. Here's one. And that's also by the same guy, Iron Kite. He's done several. There's one. Interesting. I mean, they are interesting how people do create these.
You can create anything in Photoshop.
Well, you can't really believe what you see anymore, whether it's in a photo or if it's in a video.
3 of the trips to Greece and Israel or wherever else, people were not able to be in the group photo, right? Now, when the photo, I made the copies for everybody of the photo of the group, they were in the photo even though they weren't there that day.
Peter is explaining how on our Israel tour, Ministry Israel tour groups, Peter would, if people could not be there for the group shot in Israel, he would insert them into it, so they would have a copy of the group with them in it. So with Photoshop, just using Photoshop.
I mean, you can put anybody in anything.
And here's another one.
I mean, you realize photos,
And another one here.
they're not even allowed in court anymore because of Photoshop.
This seems rather odd to me.
Look at that guy.
And I think that this photo may be around even without that. I don't know, but that's crazy. I mean, look at the size. Come on now. That's obviously, I can tell that's obviously. Now here's one for you.
I know the teeth are pretty white.
Yeah. Amazing. And there's another one. So there's a lot of them. If you go on the internet, you can find a lot of these fake giant skeleton photos. So just don't be deceived or misled, and pass it on to others and have them also get misled. This one, I think, had a caption, we're going to need a bigger digger thing.
Yeah, to remove the manure.
Yeah, really. That's a strange looking one there in the rock.
It's picture for you.
And just for fun, I thought we'd include this one. Here's a fake photo of, you know what a cyclops is from Greek mythology, like Polyphemus, a one-eyed giant, mythical one-eyed giant. And then another, I wanted to end with this fun fake photo of a mermaid here, if we can get this one in here. So there's a lot that's fake out there today, and we all know a lot of fake news, And you know, it's unfortunate because it makes it really hard. Sometimes it's really almost impossible to tell what's real and what's fake. But I'm hoping that with the study that we've been doing, that really shows from the Word of God that the truth, the accurate interpretation, that then we won't be deceived by any of this kind of thing. And are there any questions or comments or anything before we close the class? So next time we'll continue. There's still a lot more to cover. Well, I want to just mention one thing really quickly. For those who have read a lot about and believed this about, you know, the Nephilim giants, you may have probably have run across the term double rows of teeth or double teeth. Well, we're going to cover that subject as well, and it's something that is claimed to be specific to these giants, Nephilim, that they had these double sets of teeth, and that proves that they were something genetically different. Well, we're going to show how that's totally, completely, that terminology is totally misunderstood from about the 1800s, and it doesn't at all mean what people think it means, and it has nothing to do with giants, biblical giants. Okay, there's a little time. Do you want to say something? You want to come up and say something?
No, find the photo icon. Get rid of your background. Get rid of your background. Get rid of your internet. Okay. Now find the photo library.
Well, you want to show me where it's at?
You can find it for you real quick. Photo library.
You want me to open up iPhoto?
What do you want him to
Open
find?
the photo
What?
library.
We're down to 3 minutes. What do you want him to
That's
find?
fine. Open the photo library.
What are you going to show?
A photo that's photoshopped.
Of what?
My uncle.
On the horse. On the horse.
What you can do with photos.
Okay, you need to come over because you're the one who actually knows where it's at. Is it going to be in here?
Yes. All the way
Okay,
to the top.
all the way at the top?
Yeah, all the way to the top.
All right. I know which one it is, and I can click on
There's
it.
the original. There's the original.
So double click?
Yes. Okay. That's what was remaining of a photograph my dad had of his much older brother. That's all that was left of it. He was in the United States Cavalry, and my
Cavalry.
dad was
Cavalry.
He was going to. This is from the very, very early 1900s, and he was going to throw this away, and that's all that was left of the photo of his brother Tony. Okay, now click out of that one. No, click back. No.
Close it.
Close it.
Don't
No,
close it.
no. Click here.
I do it. I know it.
Right here.
Tell me the arrow.
Okay,
Tell me
yeah.
the arrow, and then I will know what to do.
All right, raise it up. Okay, now go to this one. Okay, now you can see I'm working on it in Photoshop. Can you see it, or am I blocking it? Okay. Now, it's beginning to come together, right?
Yeah.
Now, can you tell what's broken or what was replaced yet? No. Go back. Okay, click on the next one. There it is, finished in Photoshop.
But like somebody said, the horse's head is actually a little bit small looking.
Well, 'cause it's a racehorse. All right, now, there's a picture of what you can do in Photoshop.
You see the outline in the back, in the top of the horse. Right?
Yep.
It's like,
All that had to be put back. Now, you tell me what you can do in Photoshop.
So it used to be, if somebody saw it with their own eyes, they could believe it, but
Not
now
in
you can't.
Photoshop.
But now
And now you can actually do it in video.
you can't even
You can't even press
videos,
you filled in all the
anything.
blanks too, right?
I filled in everything.
Okay, so I think we can go ahead and close the class.